I'm thankful for the members of the school committee that are also here tonight.
Presentation is.
Is it that PDF? No, next one over. That might be mine.
Maybe this one. Ah. Okay, and then
Get that rid of that.
so big. Just want to test. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for the opportunity to be here again tonight. And this evening, we'll be looking at the proposed FY27 budget for the Auburn School Department. I thought it was important for you to see the Auburn School Department at a glance and the students that we serve. This is a great slide because it shows that we have 9 schools right now. We have a high school, a middle school, 6 elementary schools, and we have the alternative program that's housed at Franklin. So we have 9 buildings, and we are serving students in grades pre-K through 12. And the total enrollment, and this is the official enrollment at the end of last year, was 3,281 students. I do want to make a note that the enrollment today, as of right now, is 3,477 students, and that increase is mostly in grades 9 through 12. In terms of staff, we have around 550 staff members, including our administrators, teachers, ed techs, support staff, transportation, food service, athletics, and central office. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see our students and what their needs are. We have over 60% of our students that are classified as economically disadvantaged, and these are students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. Students with disabilities, 634, which is 19.3% of our population. And then we have 387 multilingual learners. That's just under 12% of our population. And then the students experiencing homelessness, that's at 3.4%, and that's holding steady. And this is about half of what we had last year at the same time. So this is a good number to see. Thank you. On this next slide here, you can see the values that drive our budget. Student success, equity and access, operational efficiency, and long-term sustainability. Every decision that we make really is filtered through these 4 areas. So in our budget, we are focusing on making sure that our class sizes are small and doable for teachers and students, that we have enough support staff, and that we're focusing on our graduation outcomes. And then we want to make sure that our resources are directed to the students who need them the most. So we're taking into account our multilingual learner programming, our special education programming, and interventions for students that need additional support. And then operational efficiency, where, we look at every single position, we eliminate positions that are unfilled that we might not need anymore, and we did not expand any programming or services this year. We did not add any new positions to the budget, and we are continuing to share services with the city. And then we've talked about this last week. We are looking ahead. We want to look at the long-term sustainability of our system. So we're planning for facilities consolidation and conservative use of the fund balance in the future. We are continuing to partner with the city. This has been an ongoing partnership over the last few years. We're working together to develop our budget. We are agreeing that we're not going to have new programs or services, and we are continuing to work on sharing services to reduce overall costs. And then, as we've talked about, the facilities work, where we have potential consolidation at the elementary level on the table, and the emphasis is on sustainability and responsible use of public funds. Our budget is also aligned with the school committee goals. I just wanted you to see what those goals are. Student achievement is the main driver, and achieving the 95% graduation rate is high on the list there. And then clear communication is another goal, where we want to make sure that we're reaching all of our families in the school district and also reaching out to the community and having that really important two-way communication, making sure that we are developing trust and a sense of belonging and engagement with the community. And then the facilities master plan is also a goal, addressing the capacity and infrastructure needs of the district. And then the school committee also has a goal around self-evaluation, where they want to look at how well they're doing, and that's an effort to promote continuous improvement in the system. This slide shows you the budget process that we go through every year. So we start in September, October, November, December, reviewing our enrollment projections and developing a draft of the budget. We're also meeting with administrators and directors and going over what their needs are for the coming school year. And then in January and February, we receive the state subsidy, which is the ED 279 report. And at that time, I'm putting together a proposed budget for the school committee, and we begin to go through the process. So in the month of March, the school committee every week is going over different cost centers and different aspects of the budget. And we're also gathering community input at that time. And then we're rolling into April, which is where we are right now, here in front of you at the council, going over our proposed budget. And then once we receive some feedback from you, we're going to do our final revisions. And then we're going to bring that to the school committee next Wednesday is when we're voting on our budget. So it will be helpful to get any feedback from you tonight as to where you stand with what we're going to propose. And then the month of May, you're approving the budget. And then in the month of June, we have the citywide budget validation referendum, where our cost centers and our budget goes out to the community, and they have a chance to weigh in and vote yes or no on the budget. So now we're going to look at the big numbers. So our proposed budget for fiscal year 2027, the total proposed budget is $67,685,744. This is an increase of around $3.2 million or 4.9% over last year. And then underneath that is the local share. So this is the local contribution. And this is $21,688,509. This is an increase of around $700,000 or about 3.3% over last year. It's important to look at staffing and the updates that we've made to staffing through the budget process. This year, we've eliminated 3 positions: a bus driver, a van driver, and an administrative assistant. And we've also eliminated the suspension diversion program. And then we continue to look at our grants for funding some class size reduction positions. These are positions that we have for 1 year at a time to make sure that the class sizes are manageable. And then on the right side of this slide, you can see the number of positions that we've reduced over the last 3 years. So including those 3 positions, it's 39.5 positions over the last 3 years. And then moving on now to the major cost drivers in our budget. Health insurance is a major driver. We're budgeting 12% right now, which is a little less than $1 million. And then special education costs, that's always a volatile area. Right now, that's up 9.4%, just under 1.5 million. And then our transportation costs are up quite a bit for this coming year, up 22%. And that has to do with not only fuel, but our salaries and health insurance benefits for the transportation staff. So these are all areas that are not in our control. And then if we go here to the next slide, you can see our revenue sources. So we have the state subsidy, and we were very fortunate to see an increase again this year, not as high as last year, but we are seeing a very nice increase there of $34,658,280. So that's up about $2.61 million, 8.2% over last year's amount. And then we have the City of Auburn contribution, so that's your local contribution at $21.7 million, which is up about around $700,000, which is about a 3.3% increase. And then we have debt service. This is the money that we receive from the state, the debt service aid. Park Avenue is listed there, but we no longer receive funds for Park Avenue. That one's offline now. So we're receiving $8.2 million, and that's down 7.2%, just under $700,000, because Park Avenue, as I said, is now offline. And then the fund balance is the last major source of revenue. This year, we're proposing to use $2.35 million. This is up $325,000 from last year, so it's up 16%. And it's also equal to the same amount that we used in FY25. I'm going to keep going. This next slide shows our cost centers. So when we look at our budget, it's divided into the different cost centers, the different areas that we are funding. And as you can see here, regular instruction and special education make up the majority of our spending. Regular education at 33% of our budget, and then special education at 25% of our budget. I'm going to move along. The next few slides, we are revisiting the AMS project that we shared information with you about last week. Some of the questions that came up we wanted to address in some of these slides. So this first slide is really going back to the project rationale and providing our 6th graders with a better middle school experience. One of the things that came up as a question was around the declining enrollment, and that was one of the main drivers when we began to look at the possibility of this project. So I wanted to reiterate that again. The enrollment at the elementary level in Auburn has been going down and is projected to go down. And then at the same time, when we had Harriman do the facility study, they identified $62 million in facilities needs over the next 10 years. And when we saw that number, we said, we can't do that. Like, we don't have that kind of money over the next 10 years to put into our facilities. So how can we look at being efficient and strategic and what kids need and the facilities that we have, and figure out a way to reduce the number of our buildings, but also increase the experience for our middle school students, increase the quality of that. So the plan was to create the grades 6 through 8 middle school at AMS, and this is going to improve the programming there. It's improving the curriculum and just the overall student experience. This then allows us to reconfigure the elementary schools and potentially close a school. One thing I will also say is if we don't do anything, inaction will increase the long-term costs here for our facilities. This next slide just summarizes the proposal. And I want to also say that the goal is to have this completed in the fall of 2028. So in the fall of 2028 would be when sixth graders would be moving to the middle school, if we're able to move forward with this project. And then funding the AMS project. How are we funding this project, and what's going to happen in the gap year when we haven't closed a school? So there's no cost next year for the project, but the next year we would then begin to make payments. And the first payment would be substantial because it includes a large interest payment. So it would begin with a $1.8 million payment, and that would decline over time. And then we did talk about the offsetting factor of if we close a school, then that's going to be $1.9 to $2.6 million in annual savings. So the projected annual savings are expected to cover the project costs. What we didn't talk about last week was that we have additional funding pathways for this project. One is that we anticipate that there will be an impact from changes to the state funding formula. There are potential changes coming that will benefit the Auburn School Department because the essential programs and services formula is likely to change for next year. And what they are doing is they're looking at the number of students that we have that are classified as economically disadvantaged, and they're also looking at a community's ability to pay. So what is the median income here in Auburn, and can people here pay for the education? And with some of the modeling that I've seen, we stand to gain $250,000 to $1 million on the minimum side of things, and it could be substantially more in terms of state subsidy. So that would help us, and this would also help the taxpayer. And then another funding pathway is to apply for state revolving renovation funds. And Ms. Couture has some information. I think she wants to share with you about that. Right now, we know the cap on this is $2 million, but I think some things may be changing there as well. And we do intend to apply for funding in the fall of 2026 with some of the pieces of the AMS project. Would you like to share a little bit more?
Sure. So we've taken advantage of the school revolving renovation fund twice in the last 6 years. And in 2020, what happens is you don't pay interest on the loan, and you are forgiven based on the state's share identified for each school department. So in 2020, we were forgiven 61% of the loan. So we only ended up paying 39% of what we received for renovations. In 2022, our numbers are actually very similar to what they've been identified for FY27, and we had 67% of the loan forgiven, and that was over $1.2 million that year. So as Dr. Doris said, currently the maximum you can apply for is $2 million, but the Commission on School Construction has met, and there is legislation trying to increase that amount. So either way, we have identified parts of the middle school project that qualify for the priorities in this loan. But depending on the legislation going through, there's the potential to apply for even more of this project for the loan, through the loan.
Now taking a look at how we compare to some of the other municipalities. This slide, we're looking at the per pupil cost, and we're looking at the per pupil cost that does not include the debt service. So I want to make sure that I make that point with these numbers, because there may be some articles in the paper, or there have been articles in the paper where the per pupil expenditure includes the debt service. For the purpose of this analysis, the debt service is not included, and our per pupil cost in the fiscal year 25 was $15,705. And this is well below the state average. And this ranks Auburn number 227 out of 259 districts. This puts us in the bottom 12% for per pupil spending. And on the right side of this slide, you can see the cost comparison if we look at other municipalities. And I believe these are the same municipalities that our city manager shared with you for the purpose of tax comparisons. So you can see on this, Auburn is second from the bottom, and this tells us that Auburn spends less per student than nearly every comparable city in the state of Maine. We basically turn over every stone to save money. So here we're talking about ongoing cost control and efficiencies. Every time we have a vacancy, we examine that position to make sure that we need to fill that position. We're always looking at when people are retiring or resigning, and we're always looking at every way that we can possibly save money, whether it's, reallocating a position or combining positions, looking across buildings, sharing staff across buildings. It's a focus every day in the work that we do around the budget and staffing. In terms of our budget overall, we are very, very conservative. This is a needs-based budget, so there's nothing extra here in our budget. Sharing services with the city is something that has saved us money, and we're going to continue to do that. And then the fourth thing there is the alignment with our long-term master plan for facilities. With all of this said, the return on investment is substantial here. We have one of the highest graduation rates in the state of Maine. I have top 5 in Maine for the large high schools, but we are definitely number 1 in our region for our graduation rate this last year at 97.4%. And then what we have to offer our students, these are just some highlights. We have the expanded Career and Technical Education Center at the New Auburn Little High School, which is really preparing students for careers outside of high school and for success beyond high school. And then the Donald M. Gay Performing Arts Center is a gem and something we want to mention and highlight. This has really become a regional hub for statewide events and student talent. We just hosted the OM state meet there, and I'm very proud to say that our middle school and high school teams won first place. And then in terms of our return on investment, we have world-class teachers and staff here. We have extremely dedicated professionals who support our students in many different ways, and especially with learning and with achieving success. So when I think about the budget this year, this is a statement that I would make. This budget allows us to meet today's needs while making responsible decisions that strengthen Auburn schools for the future. So we're addressing the needs in front of us today, but we're also looking ahead to say, what can we do to make sure that we can have a stronger system down the road? And with that, I will open it up to questions that you might have.
Questions from the council? Council Platt?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Great presentation. I have 2 comments. My first is an appreciation for the budget that we've all put together. I think it's pretty responsible, especially, you can look at increases. I've talked about increases in the operational budget and decreases in debt, but let's not forget the increases in revenue as well, which helps offset that, and that's why we're seeing such a low increase to the public's portion of this. My question, though, is in efforts to be so lean and with no new services, no new headcounts, what do you think are some of the areas in the school department that are taking a hit because of this lean budget? For example, I see the discontinuation of the suspension diversions program. I have no idea what the efficacy of that program was, but as a headline, that's a difficult thing to see go away. So what are some of the things that we're seeing? What are some of the pain points of a lean budget like this?
The pain points are that you're not really able to provide any kind of extra support to students beyond the core. And so we know that our students have needs beyond the classroom, social work, guidance, those areas. We can't really go any further to help our students in those areas because we have to focus everything on the core of instruction. So we need to make sure that the classroom, we have enough classroom teachers, we have enough teachers, for the core. And then beyond that, it's not possible right now to add any more.
Thank you. And I just asked that question, so we hear that a lot on the city side. We understand the impacts of no new services and what that does in the municipal side. I think it's important for people to understand that on the school side as well. A quick second question. I was curious if you had any thoughts on the pattern that we're seeing, or not a pattern, but an influx of high school students and kind of a outflux or a decrease of elementary age students. My question is, do you think that's something that repeats for a number of years with this new high school of ours, with the closure of St. Dom's? And if so, what's a long-term impact of something like that on a school system, especially financially?
I think that the increase that we're seeing is partly a result of St. Dom's closing and some of those students coming here. And I don't think that we're going to continue to see an increase in our enrollment over time. I think we've been very lucky 2 years in a row to see our enrollment going up, but it's mostly at the high school level. And, if you look at the trajectory and the current enrollment at the elementary level right now, it's not increasing, it's decreasing. So that's something we really have to think about long-term, because that's going to impact our state subsidy, and it's also going to impact our ability to keep all of these facilities open.
Other questions from the council? Council Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Doris, thanks for a great presentation. Lots of really good information. My question, it relates to the information and a reminder of information you presented at last meeting, and reflecting on, the AMS project. The total cost you have on slide 13 is $11.2 million. But that includes some things that needed to be done anyways. That was part of the study. And you made a comment that if you did nothing, the cost would go up. But can you wait on some of those things that were already in that study, or are those things that you need to move on, whether or not you consolidate 6 through 8?
Well, that's a great question. I'm going to have Ms. Couture take a stab at that, and then I'll add in if I need to.
Yeah, the capital improvement projects that we identified last time, which totaled $6.2 million, all of those items are items that really need to be done in the first 5 years of our study that was done, which was in 2023. So we're really looking at, we have 2 more years where we need to fix that roof, and we have a fire alarm system that needs to be replaced. So unfortunately, the CIP items really should not hold off anymore.
I think it's important to note, Mr. Cousins is here, and he could probably follow up on this for us for the next meeting, but when you undertake substantial construction projects, there's certain code requirements that you're then required to meet when you undertake that. Just because they're not directly related to the purpose for the renovation doesn't mean that you can defer them.
Yeah, and my thought was, if we didn't do this project, we still would need to do more than half of that $11.2 million anyways.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. And the other thing that congratulate you on the graduation rate. It's phenomenal. And reflecting on that and cost of students, and then even our demographics of your students. So just to help me understand and put in perspective, I think it was 60% economically disadvantaged. Where does that fall relative to some of those municipalities that you cited in terms of cost? Are we in the middle? Is that pretty average? Are we high?
You mean in comparison to graduation rates?
No, I'm sorry, in terms of economically disadvantaged ratio, are we seeing, is that pretty similar across all
No,
those?
I would say that we have a very needy population of students in comparison.
And then also related, is that true as well for special ed, or is that more consistent across school districts? 25% is a
I
lot
would
of.
say special ed percentages might be more consistent across the school districts.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
To follow up on the special ed question, though, from prior discussions in the Mayor's Coalition, it seems that there is often an in-migration to the larger communities that offer a broader range of special education services for families that are in need. They tend to move to the places where they can get the best services for their children. Could you comment on that at all?
That is true, and I would say Auburn is a service center, and that we do have families that move here for the services that their children can receive.
And in large part, these, if I recall from last year's conversation, in large part, a lot of these requirements regarding special education are statutorily mandated either at the federal or state level, even though a small minority of the money is actually directly funded for those programs from the entities that require it.
That is
correct?
true. That's why special education costs are such a driver in our budget.
Council Cowan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Am I remembering correctly or incorrectly that there's a larger portion of the state funding coming down does address the needs for special ed as well?
Yes, it
So
does as well.
it's less coming from tax levy. It's, yeah, thank you.
Other questions from the council? Okay. Council Duvall.
Just a quick question. When that cost per student, if you were to rank, sort of town medium income next to that, is the order the same, or?
I would have to research that. I'm not sure, City Manager Crowell, if
Yeah,
you,
so the handout that we provided shows that median income.
Could answer that.
For each of those top 10 anyway, is what we provided. So you could at least see how we compare with those communities. And that's the handout that we provided at I think it was the last workshop.
Other questions? Council Walker.
Thank you. Special education, do we do all of it in-house here, or how much is sent out?
I don't have those exact numbers for you. It's a great question, but we do have students that are receiving their education in special purpose private schools. So they're not in the Auburn School Department. They're receiving their education outside of the Auburn School Department.
Does that mean that we don't have the people to do that special education? Is that why we have to send them out?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, when students need a specialized program, we don't have that program within our district and we don't have the staff to deliver that program, then they have to go outside of the district.
I guess my next question would be, have we ever thought that maybe we ought to have our own special school to do that? This number is so big that I think we could almost build a new school for them.
We have talked about that before. We have talked about, can we build programs within the district so that we can keep all of our students in the district? The main challenge to that is staffing and finding the staff that have those specialized skills to be able to teach those students. Yes, yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, we are in the process of incorporating what has been known as child development services that is coming into the public schools and the Auburn School Department. So we will be responsible for students age 3 through 5 who have special education needs. So that is something that we are going to do within the school department and bring those kids in under our umbrella. And we already have a couple pilot programs going, and they're going very well.
Other questions from the council? Just to follow up on the debt service, could you remind me what, do you have the same floor and ceiling caps that the city does?
I think we have different floors and caps, but I'll turn it over to Ms. Couture to tell us what those are right now.
They're different.
They're the same?
They're different.
They're different? Do you recall what they are?
No, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I can get them for you.
And so the use of the 2.35 million, I guess why I'm asking that is where does that put you in that range?
In our fund balance?
Yeah, because I'll just use the city numbers because, it's 10% at the floor and 14% on the ceiling, and the fund balance has to hover in between that, and there's directives in the charter about what the city council has to do if it's lower than higher. So I'm just trying to get a sense, if you apply 2.35 to the budget this year, where does that put you in that range?
Well, in ending FY25, we're already below our 9% limit. So we looked at if we are putting 2.35 million into our revenue and still bringing a similar carryover, we're going to decrease below the 7.5%. It would bring us down just below 5 million. And it just depends on where we land at the end of FY26, though. And that's not something we can really identify just yet.
Yeah, so let me ask it a different way, right? Because you have a cap at the top, right? If I recall from prior years,
That's correct.
State statute that you have to stay below. If you apply this 2.35 million, that's going to decrease your fund balance. Does that put you at any risk to be able to respond to any type of emergent situation that occurs during the year?
It definitely puts us closer to a risk, but we're still within, a 7% fund balance. So I feel like we'll still be in a safe, range for what we'd have in our fund balance.
Great, thank you. Other questions from the council? Council Walker.
I have just a comment. Last week, I think it was last week, the city manager passed us out something for the 26 tax rates on the different towns. Most of them are the same towns that you used. The thing is that I have a problem with when you use these kind of things, and these towns have homes that are worth, like in Auburn, for instance, the average home is worth about $220,000. But you're using towns that you're saying that pay a lot higher for their pupils. But also, you take Scarborough for one, their homes average $617,000 home. Their taxes for that home is like $6,000. You also have Saco, the $420,000 average home, to our 218. So when you're using them kind of numbers that you use over here, they're not all, in my mind, true numbers, and they don't reflect the correct way. They make us look like we're not doing our share. So, and I've mentioned this in the past when the other school superintendent has brought these numbers forward. I would feel a lot more comfortable if you didn't bring them forward unless you're gonna bring the rest of the numbers with them, because when you got homes that are valued at $500,000 average, and we only got homes in Auburn at 218, we would have to raise our taxes to $44 per thousand to even catch up, which is totally unfair.
Well, just to clarify what the city manager handed out, I'm assuming you're talking about this fiscal year 2026 tax rate. yeah, schedule. I see you have it there. So that's comparing apples to apples because it removes the impact of the home value by using the median home value, which corrects for the mill rate. So I think it's valuable to look at that because it's basically comparing the median tax bill from each one of these communities against each other. I will say that having listened to quite a bit of the discussion at the Education Committee around the EPS formula, that it's very clear that there is a disparity in real dollars in the per pupil expenditures. They are what they are. When you divide out your budget by the number of pupils, you know, my recollection was Cumberland, I think, was the highest in the state, which was around $29,000 per student. That's one of the basis for the Education Committee looking at the potential changes to the EPS formula to create a more equitable situation so that cities like Auburn, who have a more challenging population that require more resources to have the same educational attainment as some of these other communities, it tries to level set that. So I think we just need to be clear that there isn't, I don't think there's any intent in providing this information to mislead anyone. I think to me, it paints a picture that I think the schools department is performing quite admirably given the tax rate that we have and the outcomes that we're achieving at that per pupil expenditure. Other questions by the council? Mr. Manager?
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of things to echo. I think Dr. Doris talked about the collaboration between city and school services. We gain traction on that constantly. As we've been working through that, we're finding efficiencies. We're finding ways that we should be at the same table together. I think a good example would be Dr. Doris and I meet every 2 weeks. And so now I know that schedule. Just this week, we invited Maine to that meeting, and that's the Manufacturers Association of Maine. And because we wanted to have a broader conversation about student readiness in the workforce for manufacturing. And so our economic development director was there. We got to have a good conversation about how do we introduce our current manufacturing facilities to our teachers so they know what's that environment for their students so they can talk about that. How can they look at including that as part of their curriculum? You know, so that's that traction that we're gaining. And I think to Councilor Platz's question regarding suspension diversion, that was a joint effort between the school and the city. And there was a real need when it was implemented. There was well over 350 suspensions a year that they were working through and managing. And now that number is closer to around 60, probably less than 60. So it met its need. I think it's demonstrated it. I think a piece that we'll probably need to continue to evaluate, because this wasn't just a decision that, by the way, suspension diversion's gone. There was a conversation with the school and the city regarding that, because there's direct community impacts when a student is suspended and is just in the community with no supervision. And so, one thing that we talked about was what are the cases that we're seeing for suspensions now, and a lot of them have to do with vaping, and I think that goes back to Councilor Cowan will remember this, back to our early days of Healthy Androscoggin when it was really tobacco-free LA. We implemented a smokeless Saturday program, right? So those are things that we should probably be talking about, because if those numbers, we're seeing those vaping numbers, then what do we need to be doing to try to help address that? And that might be something we want to revisit, where it doesn't necessarily need to be an in-school type suspension. It can be an education program that a student must attend that we collaborate with Healthy Androscoggin to make sure that's happening. So we'll continue having those, but I think it'd be really important to make sure we continue monitoring that And if we start, we certainly don't want to see us back to the 300-plus numbers. I think you're always going to have some students that have had a bad day. They're going to get suspended. There's going to be, but it's something that we can monitor and ensure that those numbers aren't creeping back up to those levels that we were at before. So we'll continue doing that. I think the collaboration is happening. We'll continue working through this. I just want to commend Dr. Doris and her team on working through this budget the way they have.
Councilor Cowan.
City Manager, thank you for the information on that, because that was a question I had as well in terms of that program. It's nice when you can turn it off because of success. And I also just want to highlight the collaboration and the cost sharing between the city and the school is something that I often will talk to residents about as an example of innovative ways you're trying to save money in the city. I don't know how often it's done in other municipalities, but I can say, it is something that people are, wow, okay, great, you were looking for ways to do it. So I commend you all from doing that. And then a final huge thank you to the school committee for your hard work on this budget. So,
Councilor Duval.
Yeah, just a quick question, I think, for the city manager on the cost savings. What's the net for the city, right? So if the school department saves a lot of money because the city's now doing a lot of the things that they used to pay for and do, so if you look at the whole pie, to what extent did that actually help us?
Yeah, we probably would be able to provide you the value gain on what we're currently collaborating on. But we know that the school is offsetting some of the city's expenses. And when I go through the manager's recommendation, I can show you what that number is. There's an MOU that we have. It's offsetting that. It's probably just under $200,000, somewhere in that ballpark. But so we can show that, and that's by not adding any additional staffing. It's supervising the staffing that the school had as it pertained to their school maintenance, janitorial services, but then leveraging our supervisors and some of our teams regarding some work orders. So we've moved this school into a complete work order system when it comes to needs that they have, which has been really beneficial, not just for our team to be able to track that, but also for, I think, the administrators in the schools to know that their work order has been placed, they can get an update, they can see where that is. There's a lot of value to that time and efficiency that's taking place that we probably don't capture well, but we can provide you a good summary of some of this. And then but one thing that we don't capture now, because now it's just the program is in place, what we're not capturing is the school working on a project and renting a piece of equipment that we already own. That's not happening anymore because we're part of that discussion, we're part of that process. And so we don't really see those any longer, but we're certainly seeing a great deal of efficiencies.
Other questions from the council? Not see anything. Appreciate you coming in and giving us an update, and look forward to working with you and the school committee as we go through the budget process.
Thank you very much. Did you want to provide us with any further direction as we head into finalizing our budget, and we have a meeting next Wednesday where the school committee is going to be voting on the budget?
I don't think we have any guidance at the moment. A little later here in the work session, that topic's going to come up when we have some further discussion here about the FY27 budget, so we may have some guidance for you before the end of the evening.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is discussion of the opioid settlement funds. I think there's a couple items to handle here. One is the Mr. Holmes and the manager are going to give an overview of what the opioid settlement funds are and what they might be used for. And then we have several requests for opioid fund utilization to discuss. Mr. Holmes?
I'll jump in first. Thank you, Mayor. Just for the council, just a little background. This process regarding Auburn receiving these funds started, I think it was in 2018. We had to do a great deal of data collection on our community and provide that data as part of the, to the attorneys that we had signed on with regarding funds to come through some of the pharmaceutical lawsuits that were taking place. And so we signed on independently, but then also the state had also levied a lawsuit with other states. So we receive funds as an individual receiver, but we also receive funds as a result of also being part of the state of Maine and funds that come in. There's a few different hoops we have to go through as far as what's required of us at a federal level, but then what's also required of us at a state level, and the MOU that we have regarding receiving those funds from the state. I think one thing that we really are looking to capture from you tonight, because even though we've been collecting these funds, we really haven't gone to the council yet to dispense these. We've been carrying a number in the budget the last few years for the PSY program. And it's been about $60,000. We haven't spent any of that, so we've spent $0 in these funds because we've had other grant funds that have covered PSY, and we're still doing that. And so, if you recall, if you go back to taking a look at revenue, we did not allocate any funds for PSY through the budget process because we knew we were going to be having this conversation regarding allocation of opioid funds. So what we're really looking for on the council is some direction. Other communities have done various different approaches to dispersing their opioid funds. I think that we're at a good place now to start identifying how do we interpret certain programs that are coming forward, what programs make sense for us as a community, and then what our allocation should look like. I did provide for you with Glenn, we put together a workshop that, information sheet rather, that talked about where we currently are with funds and then what we think we'll be at by 2030, based on what we're receiving on a quarterly basis. And so for the council consideration, really need to decide, do you want to adopt an evaluation criteria for us to award funds? And your evaluation criteria might be, you must meet the national and state requirements to receive funds for opioid, whether it's intervention, prevention, whatever category we want to draw from. And we recommend that. We think that that's the best way to do it, so we don't have another layer of consideration that must be given. And then the other piece is, do you want to, is there an annual amount you want to allocate? And the challenge with that is that you might have a program that has some startup costs. And you want to be able to provide the startup costs money so they can launch the program, and then there will just be an annual allocation after that. So that's going to be something to consider. And then, some communities have done a citizen advisory committee. Those are challenging. Just, we see some challenges with that because it's who will be at the table. Is there conflicts with those that are at the table? Because you want that community voice in that process. And they might also be applying for funds. And those would be the people that you would actually have at the table to evaluate it. And so, because we have the criteria, it really can be decided here at the council. Staff can go through and vet the applications. Do they meet all these qualifications? And we could check that through. And if they do, then they come to your level for consideration. And then, do you want to consider a multi-year request? And I think this is really important because it's challenging for an entity to say, we're going to put all this effort in, we'll stand up this program, but we don't know if we're going to see funding next year. And so giving consideration for a multi-year, I think, demonstrates a better opportunity for success. for our partner. And that's really what we're doing. As a community, we're partnering with an entity to say, your program, we see value in, it meets all the criteria at the national and state level, and we want to see you succeed, so you need to plan beyond just a one-year allocation. And so those are the considerations. I'm sure, Glenn and his team and Jennifer have been working through this, but I just want to frame that out for you based on going back to 2018 when we started really identifying everything that we needed to submit to where we are today. There's been a little bit of a road here that we've journeyed with. And just so the council knows, we did look and we tried to do this in a regional approach with County and Lewiston. In the initial phase, we brought both of those entities together. We said that this could be really legacy-changing opportunity for us as a region. And we didn't get any traction there. There was no interest. We hosted a meeting here for that. Each entity has been distributing their funds as they see fit. And that was just the will of those communities when we began the conversation. So our goal was, we knew we needed to build that up some, and so that you can now apply that. If we had just done it year one, it would have been, a very minimal amount of money to be able to apply, and no one would have really been able to start a program. You now have, with just under 700,000, you now have a good starting point to launch something that can be long-lasting, impactful for our community, and demonstrate the results you're hoping for. So, Glenn, anything we need to add to that?
No, I think you've covered it well. I mean, we are really looking for direction. We do have some people that came tonight that have put in some requests, and if you wanted to hear something about what these programs might look like, but really for the department, what we're looking for is some direction on how you'd like to have these things come back to you and be presented. I think you'll see in the information we provided, just kind of laid out some of the key points we think are important.
Questions from the council? Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Should we set a time of the year where people can submit their requests for funding? Or are we going to do as a needs basis, anytime anybody needs some money to start up a program that's going to meet these criteria, that it just comes in front of us?
That would be up to the council to make those determinations. I mean, for my team, it doesn't matter a whole lot. We can either have once a year we sit down with everything, or we can do them as they come in.
Yeah.
Whatever the council's happy with.
I think there's value in doing it during the budget process, because I think as we see programming, we want sustainability, right? So there's going to be a time where these pilot programs are starting, and then is there a supplemental that goes with that? Because we're seeing such great results. Is there a need that might come from the city to help sustain these beyond what, this money is not going to be here forever. So is there an opportunity to add to that based on our other budgeting process? So I think during the budget year makes sense.
Other questions? Council Platt.
Thank you. Yeah, just to echo, I guess, some of the comments you brought up, I would be in support of at least a discussion of creating some sort of framework, some criteria, whether it's a national standard or a state standard. I think that's very smart. I would want to also understand the nature of the request monetarily relative to what is available. And I would think we'd want to know that context every year, and perhaps the limits that we could give away are relative to that amount that we have, that balance that we have. So other than that, yeah, I think we need to create a consistent structure that gives everyone who's qualified a chance at the funds.
Councilor Duval.
Yeah, I think I concur with Councilor Platts. So things that I would want to see would be, just written out what you think a good process is. Like, what are the pieces? And I would want to see some sort of rubric for evaluation. We have, of course, the statute, so I don't think that's very difficult. Mm-hmm. And then, as proposals come in, I would want to see the scores and evidence stacked up against that rubric, and sort of how you think each one, and what the impact on the fund would be, of course. And also about assessment and monitoring. So how do we know whatever is being proposed is actually going to work? and how we're going to monitor that. And then, as I think city manager was saying, how can that be? What's the potential for institutionalization of these programs that start up with this money? So that would be the kind of framework I would want. And I agree the timing should be now during budget time.
So when you say institutionalization of it, you're talking about the fact that the city may eventually start to pick up that tab long-term, or that they have the ability to get funding in other places so they can be ongoing without our support?
Yes.
Other question? Councilor Cowan?
Just, I agree with those comments. The criteria, I think, are really important. Keeping it simple, state and national criteria would be great. I'm sure that those include evidence-based programming in there, so I'm good with that. I think that makes it simple, but the rubric is really important. It's a fair and equitable process to anyone that's coming forward. I think the one additional piece I would say is I would welcome some discussion by the council in terms of that question of the second bullet, which I think, in a broader sense, how long do we potentially want some of these funds to be around? Are we thinking, what's been proposed here today? That's getting close to half of what we would expect by 2030. So, is that good or not? But just having that conversation so that we have that as a framework of, it gets to what Councilor Platts was saying, what's left. But I think maybe even in the beginning saying how far out would we think we want to try to have some funding in order, based on what we see as how long the problems we're trying to tackle are going to take.
Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the question in my mind is, do we accept proposals from newly formed groups that have formed to basically try to qualify for this money? Or do we also should look at the track record of whoever applies for this money, so that we know that they're not a fly-by-night and that they've got a history, something behind them to build off of?
Councilor Platt?
Yeah, take a stab at that. I think both. I think it's a great point. I think you need to create criteria that give space for all of that. You get points for experience, but you also get points for passion. I think that in looking at the three requests on here, I think it's also important that we as a council embrace that there are different entities trying to tackle different objectives. You've got entities that are more independent, that might partner with the city. We have the PSY program here. That's a city program, or at least a grant-funded city program. We have Spurwink, which I think the background behind that is our partnership with Spurwink through the school system that's wildly underfunded. So some of these have direct ties to taxpayer funds, some don't. I don't think we want to choose now that one of those is better than the other. I think we want to, look at these based on merit and based on impact. So as you create a rubric, again, I would say merit and impact.
Councilor Randall?
For me, it's about setting clear and consistent approach and being able to move forward with measurable outcomes. I support moving forward with clear expectations and maybe some consideration for reserving some funds for later use.
Councilor Cowan?
I'm also, one of the things that I looked at, it's following up on Councilor Platz's, even with the Great Falls Youth Corp, it's partnering with an existing program we know is supported, valued by the community. So I think that could potentially be another criteria. Is are we linking to established programs that would enhance? It's a win-win situation type of thing.
Other questions? So a few comments. I think that just from the comments we've heard, it's unlikely that anyone on the council's actually read the criteria. So we'll have the manager circulate it. The criteria is based on a legally binding document that the state of Maine signed in effect, an interstate compact that outlined the settlement agreement regarding the opioid funds and what the uses were. It's very, very detailed. the City of Auburn has no authority to spend any of these funds outside of those directives, right? So there's lots of choices within the scope of those directives, but there may be all kinds of good things that could come before the council for which you're not going to have authority to allocate funds to. Big picture, I think what you'll get out of that if you read through the MOU is that fundamentally these monies have to be used for something that has a direct impact on opioid addiction and some of the associated impacts that brings forth. They have to be evidence-based programs, and depending on the category, some of the categories require not only they be evidence-based, but that the evidence-based program has to have had a prior demonstrated effectiveness in mitigating opioid addiction. So it's fairly, there's some significant restrictions around these funds. The other thing that I would say is just a couple follow-up comments. As the manager said, we tried repeatedly, probably over a year and a half period, to try to do something regionally. That didn't work out. I just want to make sure people don't think it didn't work out because people didn't want to cooperate on a regional basis. There were some significant drivers at the county. They're using their opioid funds for medically assisted treatment at the jail, something that's required for them to do, for which very little funding was provided. So this is how they're trying to meet that, and that's clearly one of the objectives in the MOU, the medically assisted treatment. And then Lewiston is allocating their funds for a variety of programs, and at least one of these programs, one of these applications that's before us now, is a partnership with Lewiston funding their share of that. The other thing I would point out is that the funding for this is not consistent on a year-over-year basis. There's many of these lawsuits. They all have different terms about the payments. The distribution factor that's applied for Auburn never changes against the pool of money that comes in, but the amount of money that's coming in each year is not the same. We've also accrued a substantial amount of what we're going to receive. A lot of this money was in some ways front-end loaded, so that the annual amounts you were getting up front, they weren't the same year to year, but they were higher than in a lot of the out years. And I guess the last comment I would make is I think that given the nature of these funds and that there's a finite amount of resources here, that we should treat these like we do with a lot of grant programs, and the council should look at expending these funds not for ongoing programs, but for either project-based programs or things for startup, and that there's not going to be the bandwidth in this funding stream to fund programs, on a long-term, basis, 5, 6, 10 years down the road. There's not going to be that type of money available. So other questions from the council? We only have about 20 minutes, so my suggestion would be that we circulate the guidance from the MOU. The manager can send that around to the counselors, and that at the next council meeting, we'll take a look at the 3 proposals after the council's had a time to digest, the underlying requirements for these types of programs. Is that sense of the council to proceed in that way? Council Duval?
Sorry, would that be in a workshop setting or in? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it would be a
Yep.
workshop. Any other questions on this item? Great, thank you very much, Mr. Holmes and Ms. Edward. We'll move on, and we're going to talk a bit here about the continuation of the budget process. Just for the public, to catch everybody up, make sure everyone's on the same page of where we're at. So the manager, at the request of the council at the last meeting, presented impact statements of achieving the benchmark the council had set of a 7.5% tax levy. That would be reducing it from the 12.95%. That would have required, round numbers, $4.4 million in reductions on the city side. I think we heard from six of the councilors. I guess I give Councilor Geary an opportunity to weigh in here. At the close of the last meeting, the question that was put to the councilors was, were they satisfied with the 7.5% and the 4.4 million in cuts? Did they think the 7.5 was too high, should be lower, and we would go back to the manager for additional impact statements, for additional cuts, or was the cuts proposed at 7.5 too deep, and we should adjust the target, the benchmark, upwards and reduce the cuts? So I know, Councilor Geary, you didn't have a chance to weigh in on that to close the last meeting. Any thoughts that you have on that?
My ultimate goal is try to look out for those Auburn residents and taxpayers that are on a limited income. I mean, people that don't have exorbitant incomes and that we may affect them. The seniors that are on a fixed income and will have to cut their cost, their expenses even more than what they have today, or even the young families that have just started out. Whatever we do, it's going to affect their mortgages, those that have got mortgages, because everything changes and I mean, I don't want to lose employees, and I don't want to cut services to the point that we don't have services. And I mean, like, for instance, the senior center, cutting that down, I mean, to non-existence does not make sense, because right now there's not a whole lot of staff there, that the senior groups that have come in there, they do everything that they need to do. I mean, when I was going to First Auburn, the president and presidents of the groups and the volunteers, they set everything up, got everything ready. They did everything they had to do for the whole time that the seniors were there, which was usually from about 8:30, 9 in the morning till maybe 2 o'clock when they would do Beano. So to cut a program that we have minimal to no staff does not make sense.
I appreciate your response. I'm not sure I'm clear on the answer. Where are you on the benchmark of 7.5%?
I still think that's high, but I understand the ramifications of the cuts we do. But I can't support going up to 10%.
So your thought is that the 7.5, you would stay at the 7.5 with the 4.4 million in service reductions?
I may come up to 8, but that's not giving you much wiggle room. But I'm sure as heck is not going to support 10 or 11%.
Okay, so I appreciate you weighing in with your thoughts on that. So I think where we left then with the council is that the sense of the council was that the 7.5% with a $4.4 million in service reductions was too deep of a cut. And we asked the manager to relook at this with a different target of around 9%. I think the manager will go through the handout that he's provided here. I guess I would say that it's kind of a two-edged sword. If you have a smaller cut, in some way it's easier to do the impact statements, and in some ways it's harder, because when you get down to smaller cuts, you know, that you can't cut sometimes a half of something and have anything left. So I think big picture, the manager will go through some numbers where they are. They're in the process of working through this. I think next Monday we'll be able to have some additional thoughts about what the differential would be. As you'll see on the chart, where they are right now is at 9.86%, with some additional thoughts about the reduced impacts of what that would be on the budget. And after the manager goes through this, I think we need to loop back around to discuss the what the ask might be of the school committee. There's a number built into this chart, but I think we need the council to weigh in and give some direction to the superintendent and the school committee so they can discuss that on Wednesday night and come back to the council for our next meeting about what the impacts of that might be. So with that, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you look through this slide, this is the only slide I have for you tonight. Basically, a high-level look at where we currently are at with the budget. That first column is that's our base, right? That's what was adopted last year. So that's our fixed column for the council adopted FY26 budget. The blue.
This is the tax levy, correct?
Sorry?
These numbers are the tax levy?
These numbers are your tax levy
Tax
numbers,
levy.
absolutely. Yep. And so the blue section, the manager recommendation, like I've been talking about this through the whole process, those numbers are changing. As we continue to fine tune where we're at, what we're looking at for numbers, new numbers are coming in as we really start working this down. This is where I'm currently at. If you remember, I think the initial, when we first had a conversation, I think Dr. Endoris and I had come, and I think it was, it was probably somewhere around 15%. And then that number has moved a little bit since then. I think the last meeting we had, you were at I was at 12.5% is where we were sitting. When I do the city manager presentation on next Monday night, that's when I'll officially give the manager's budget. We're going to be around 11%. And so we'll continue working some of those numbers over the next few days. But I feel pretty confident that the numbers that we were waiting for, changes that we were looking at, will come in at that 11%. So then from there, you have where I'm currently looking at for the council proposed. To get to that, around that 9%, definitely under 10 is some of the comments I heard. So there's some elements in here to get to that. You'll notice that there are 4 line items here that don't change. So if you look at the municipal debt, that's a fixed number. Intergovernmental operations, I've kept that at a fixed number. I think you heard from 911 and you heard about the challenges with 911 if you make any changes there, what that looks like. So I've left that as fixed. And LATC is fixed. Your county tax is fixed. And so that's what's in that intergovernmental line item. And then the school debt and the overlay, those numbers have not changed. So the two lines, municipal operation, the manager's budget is going to be around 1.5 million at an 8.1%. And then what I'm recommending to help get to where we need to be is some additional reductions that get you to the 6.8% on municipal operation. And then school operation is currently sitting at 700,000 that the superintendent shared during her presentation. To get to the 9.8, part of the conversations that were happening at the last workshop, I've plugged in a reduction of 500,000 for the school operations side. So to go back to where we were at for city operations at the 12.5, we were sitting right around, just over $3 million. And so now we're at the 1.5, and then it'll go to 1.2. So that's where we're at today. I'll have a full presentation on what's driving these. I think where we can really get into conversations for the 9.8 is what's in those columns that change that number. Because I feel confident where we're at on the manager side, programming, again, not reducing programming, but finding efficiencies, that's all in that blue column. But I think we can really dig into what I'm recommending for you to consider to get to the 9.8.
So questions from the council and thoughts about the school number? Council Platt.
Yeah, so my question is about the school number, just so to make sure I understand this. So in the proposed manager budget with a 11.1% increase on the tax levy, that's adopting the school budget that was presented today.
That's correct.
So the $500,000 increase, a decrease, I do see that. That is based on, that's based on what you think may result from this conversation. It's a placeholder for what may
Yeah.
result from this
What came
conversation.
from the last meeting.
Got it. So
Right.
it's not based on costs that you see come in and you're making adjustments. Okay, I understand.
Right, it would be the 500,000 would be the ask of the school committee to come back to the council with an impact statement is if they have to reduce their operating budget by $500,000 from what the superintendent proposed this evening.
Okay, so, I understand. I guess my question is, so we'd be asking the school to decrease 500 from their proposed budget, but I'm looking at the municipal operation, and it looks like between the proposed manager's budget and council proposed budget, we've only shaved off 240,000.
Well, I've already reduced the manager's budget from where we were before. So that's the number that I've been talking about that I continue to kind of work through. But we were, the overall tax levy was at 7.3 million. And you'll see we're sitting now at 6.4 million on the manager's budget. So that's what's been reduced already from the last presentation to be at the 12.5.
And is that because you have made discretionary decisions, or because things are coming in at lower
No, most of them-
expenditures than we thought?
Yeah, most of those are discretionary. It's looking and saying, okay, can we do something different here? Can we create some efficiencies, reduce some costs, but still be able to deliver programming?
I'm asking because I want to understand when to compare apples and when to compare oranges. And so someone's going to fixate on the number 500,000 for the school, and we need to make sure what we're comparing that to. So what I just said we're comparing that to is not correct. You can't just look at this sheet and say, all right, 240,000 less for the city, 500,000 less for the school. That's not fair. We need to dig a little deeper to make those comparisons.
So it's I think it's around 1.2 million, is that right? On the city side?
On the city side? Yeah, I think
That would be the
Yeah.
comparative number to the 500,000, it's around round numbers, 1.2 million.
go to your last comparison sheet that the finance director provided you. You'll see what the municipal operation number was at, and
Is that the 2.56 tax levy? Is that what you're referring to?
yeah, if you go down
From
for the
330.
municipal operating, it was 2.3, right?
Yep.
Where we're at.
Yeah, what I'm seeing from March 30th was 2.56.
That was at the higher percentage, so when you go down to the 9.86, that reduces that amount. I think it's fair to say that there'll still be reductions in the budget. And what we're expecting Monday night is, I think, the manager looked at the impact statements before. They're building off that with a lower number. What would those reductions look like? And are there some different ways to achieve those same reductions through, other combinations of efficiencies that could be gained? It's still a work in progress, so we won't have the details until Monday, but it's important to get some sense of this as a basis for the council to make the ask to the school committee. So thoughts on that? Councilor Cowan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Councilor Platz's question, because that was what was going through my mind too, and it was very helpful to be reminded. You've already removed things, City Manager, so with that new reflection, I'm more comfortable saying that 500,000, and ask of, please provide us the impact of a 500,000 additional cut, is comparable in size and what we're already cutting. So I'm supportive of what we're proposing here.
I think it's less. And
yes, I mean, in ratio, it's their overall budget, but they get more money from the state. So in my mind, that felt good, that 500,000 is good.
So I think the number, the comparison for the council to make is at the operating budget increase line, right? The debt service is highly variable. Intergovernmental is, for the most part, fixed. So after you make reductions, I think the operating budget increase is the place to make the comparison. I think it gets very complicated if you start then trying to factor in revenue increases. I think that those are outside the control of the council, so the operating budget number is the place to look. The reduction in the operating budget percentage increase would be higher on the municipal side than it would be on the school side, even with the $500,000 ask. And we're not taking some type of final action on this $500,000. We're just making requests for the superintendent to work with the school committee to advise the council on what that type of impact would be. Councilor Randall.
Some of the state funding that she was talking about, will that help offset this, or just only the project at the middle school?
The state, to be clear, there's kind of two pieces to this. The school aid that the city will receive this coming year is fixed, and it's already in this budget. The superintendent has accounted for that as revenue, and as she pointed out earlier, because of just the way it works, there was a substantial increase that greatly benefited the city as a whole this year. What might happen coming forward is yet to be determined in the closing days of the legislature regarding the school funding formula, how that works out. I think it's pretty clear at this point there's no possibility that there will be anything coming out of that to apply in FY27. Mr. Manager?
Yeah, I think just to Councilor Platt's comparing apples to apples, I think it's just for the council to know, when you get your packet, probably the best document to look at is the comparison data. And yes, we're looking at tax levy up here, but if you go to just look at the expenses, I think that's where you're going to see where are we currently at on increases, and to get to the 9.8, you're going to see operating expenses on municipal is 4.1, intergovernmental 7.8, the county tax is 9.1, so those total municipal expenses is coming at 4.69. The TIF expense is something that, even though I have it broken out as a separate line item, because there's benefits on both city and school side when we allocate funds for the TIF. So you see a 10% increase there, but know that that's going to be a decrease, or sorry, that's going to be an increase on the school's revenue, and it's going to be a decrease on the city's contribution to the county tax, but it'll also be an increase on our state revenue share. So there's a lot of moving pieces. When you see that TIF amount increase, there's benefits on both sides of that. You're going to see the municipal side is increasing to 350,000, the cost for us to pull that out. But it's really, that's going to be a combination benefit across the board. And then total school expenses is at 6.39. This is just their expense line item. There's no revenue in there.
Is that after a considered $500,000 reduction or before?
This is after the $500,000.
After?
Yes.
Because right now,
Yeah.
it's 7.3 as
That's
proposed.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. And, yeah, this is all based on, to get to the 9.8. And then your debt service, and again, this is collectively, it's at 7 point, that didn't change, right? So that's at 14.6, both city and school on the debt service. So that might be a good document for you to take a look at and say, okay, expense-wise, where we're at, because we all have drivers with revenues on both sides that's going to help reduce that number that you see up there regarding the tax levy itself. So,
I understand that, but I guess I would appreciate, maybe I'll have to digest it a little bit more, but there's a larger proportion. The amount of money when you look at the tax levy in expenses is a different ratio from municipal to school than when you look at the total costs. And that's because there's a different ratio a standard different ratio of expenses coming in from the state. So in my mind, that's why I guess I say I'm comfortable asking for the impact on 500,000. I don't want it to be equal to the cut on the municipal, because I don't think it's an equal. I don't think that's a fair thing. I think the approach you've taken, I appreciate the approach you've taken there.
Other questions or thoughts? The sense of the council to ask the school committee to review the $500,000 reduction and come back to us with impact statement?
And just to be clear, we're at approximately 1.2 on the city side? Based on napkin math? that
To
you
reach
just did?
9.86, it's not going to be any less.
Right. But, okay. Yeah, I'm in support of that. I think, again, I'm focused on the increase in the operating budgets of each department. I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think you can look at the revenue, because to me, that state subsidy, it's a subsidy to the taxpayer, not to the municipality, right? So I agree with where we're at.
Except that in some case, of course, this is the same on the municipal side too, but I think I'm understanding correctly that when you think of things like special education, you're not going to be able to cut as much there as you would from general education if we're asking to cut, right? So it's similar to what we're talking about with, the kinds of the certain things that we can cut from the municipal side. So and a large portion of that's coming from the state. So in my mind, I'm having a hard time completely separating them, but I'll work at it.
Anything further on the school issue? So Superintendent Doris, you got what you needed? Great, thank you very much. We're a little over time here, so we'll wrap this up. We'll have a more detailed discussion next Monday about, on the city side, how we intend to get to the 9.86 and proceed from there. So with that, we'll adjourn and we'll take a quick break here for 2 or 3 minutes to let everybody get situated, and then we'll convene the council meeting.
Our show's fixed.
The April 6, 2026 Auburn City Council meeting will be called to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could have the councilors introduce themselves, starting with Council Geary.
Good evening, Belinda Gary, City Councilor at Large.
Good evening, City Councilor, Ward 1, Rachel Randall.
Good evening, Tim Cowan, City Councilor for Ward 2.
Good evening, Matthew Duvall, City Council, Ward 3.
Good evening, Jeff Harmon, Mayor.
Good evening, Kelly Butler, City Councilor, Ward 4.
Good evening, Leroy Walker, Council, Ward 5.
Good evening, Adam Platt, City Councilor at Large.
Good evening, Brennan Edwards, Student Representative.
Phil Kroll, City Manager.
Thank you. The first item on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. There's one item on it, appointing the election clerks for a 2-year term from May 1st, 2026 to April 30th, 2028. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Been moved by Council Walker. Is there a
Second.
second? Seconded by Council Cowan. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is approval of the minutes from the March 16, 2026 regular City Council meeting. Are there any errors or corrections? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to adopt?
Motion to move.
Moved by Council Walker. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Council Platts. The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll move on to the first open session of the evening. If there's any members of the public that would like to address the council regarding items not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the open session is closed. We'll move on to unfinished business. The first item is Ordinance 0503162026, amending Chapter 60, zoning of the city's Code of Ordinances regarding protections for important farmland and natural resources. This is for second reading and a public hearing. It's a reminder to the council and the public, the council took this up at the last meeting at first reading. This is amendment to the ordinance that in effect substantively prohibits the siting of solar arrays in the ag zone on land that is prime farmland or soils of statewide importance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Geary. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Platts. If there's any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item, the public hearing is open. Please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the public hearing is closed. Discussion by the council. Council Platts.
I just had a question on the brief here. It says a total of 71 acres of solar projects have been constructed. Does that imply that they've been constructed on prime farmland or just as it says in the ag zone?
Where are you?
I'm at the ordinance, the link of the ordinance in the agenda.
In what section?
I downloaded it off of the agenda. Sorry.
Oh, you're
unfinished
in the,
business.
You're at the, you're in
the attachment.
You're in the information sheet.
I'm in the ordinance 05 file attachment on
Yep.
the agenda.
And
On the front page there, it just mentions number of acres where solar projects have been constructed.
Right.
And I was just curious, is that acres in the ag zone or is that acres on prime farmland in the ag zone?
So this total of 71 is in the ag zone. We don't we don't have an actual count of how much of that was on prime farmland or soil of statewide importance because no actual testing was required previously under the ordinance.
Okay, great. That clears up my question. Thank you.
Other discussion by the council? Council ready for the question? Vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Platts?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Randall?
Yes.
Counselor Cowan?
Yes.
Counselor Duval?
Yes.
Counselor Butler?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
7, having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll move on to new business. The first item is Order 3004062026, approving on-premise beer and wine license for CRL Seafood, doing business as Always Fresh La Rochelle Seafood at 22 Mill Street. There will be a public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Counsel Walker. Is there a
Second.
second? Seconded by Counsel Cowan. We'll open the public hearing. If there's any member of the public who would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the public hearing's closed. Discussion by the council. Counsel Walker.
Thank you. I'd just like to say good luck, and I think it's something that's been needed a long time.
Very forward to bring it up. Wonderful little nook here to downtown Auburn, and offering some great food and products in the future.
Other questions or comments by the council? Counsel Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So does this mean that you can go in, sit down, order a meal, and order a drink to go with the meal?
Sorry, certain procedures here, but I think we can answer this for you. You can order, and if you see the diagram, there's going to be an expansion on one side of the building roped off where there'll be outdoor dining. It's going to be the same as a lot of other places we have in the city where they'll be able to purchase their food and the beer or wine and then consume it on premise. Council Walker.
Also, I'd like to say thank you for the nice work that you've done to change the looks of that area and that building.
Other questions or comments by the council? I have one item to point out here, and I'm going to have this on the next one as well. So there's an error regarding the nearest church, school. The clerk will know what all these categories are. It says it's Trinity Episcopal, which would be over in Lewiston. That's not the case. 6th Street Congregational Church is closest. I don't think this is going, the clerk could answer this for us, is going to make any material difference in the application, but I just wanted to point out that there is an error. And I'm assuming this must come when they put their application in, because there's an error on the next one as well, in the same field.
Yes, that's correct, and there is no material, it doesn't make a material difference for the application. Correct.
Any further questions or comments by the council? Is the council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll move on to Order 3104062026, approving an on-premise beer license for Lucador Corp., doing business as Lucador Tacos at 945 Center Street. Again, this will be for a public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Counsel Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Randall. We'll open the public hearing. If there's any member of the council that would like to address if there's any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the public hearing is closed. Questions or comments from the council? Again, Madam Clerk, I'd point out here, it shows on the application, High Street Congregational Church is the closest facility. It's actually Grace Community Church, which is quite a bit closer. Again, I'm assuming it makes no material difference in the application. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any further comments or questions by the council? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 3204062026, adopting the 5-year CIP plan for FY '27 through FY '31. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Cowan. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilor Platts. Discussion by the council. And if I would point out to the council, this is, I'll find the tab in your budget book. It's, if you put it under this capital improvement tab like I did when the finance director handed it out last week, I had it under title, under tab 5. It's titled the Citywide 5-Year Capital Improvement Plan. Any questions?
I have a
Councilor
quick
Platt?
question, just, I guess, as to the structure of this vote. I guess, what is it that we're voting on here? I understand what the vote is, but we can remove and or add items, we can change numbers. So really, this is just we support the 5-year concept, basically.
So I think it's, well, first, this is required by charter, and as the manager said, internally, they're going to be moving to a 10-year plan. I think this is really a way to project out what's known at the time for capital improvements over the last 5 years. Obviously, the near-term things never get fully funded here in a couple of weeks when we vote on the budget, but it's trying to identify priorities and timing for capital improvements will be coming down the road.
So it binds us to nothing, but it proves that annually we've addressed this issue and responsibly we've done our best to project out 5 years.
That's correct. Other questions or comments by the council? Any comments, Mr. Manager?
No, I think you summarized it well, Mayor. I just say, there's also, we'll get asked questions regarding, do we have a 5-year CIP plan? Might be something within our audit procedure. There's a category for that. There's also a category when we apply for funding. If it's a grant funding and we're going after grants, they want to know, is this something you've even thought about as a city, or are you just submitting this application? And when we can demonstrate that, then that helps us with that funding.
So that's a reason there might be items in there that you're not necessarily recommending we fund them, but they're in there because they may have use for other purposes.
Perfect example. Yep.
Or they may show up in the budget, but they might not show up on the tax levy.
Right.
Other thoughts or questions by the council on the CIP plan? Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 3304062026, the annual report to the Maine State Housing Authority regarding affordable housing districts and the associated tax increment financing. As background, I'm sure that the council and the public at this point is familiar with the tax increment financing program. There is a specific variant of that for affordable housing in which when the city adopts those, the Community and Business Development Office is required on behalf of the city to report annually to the Maine State Housing Authority regarding those TIFs. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Moved by Council Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Platts. If there's any member of the public who would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Is the council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 3404062026, amending the agreement with the Auburn Lewiston Municipal Airport to refinance the outstanding principal on the Hangar Number 5 loan for 20 years at 2.58% interest. This will require some explanation and background, especially for the new members of the council. So we'll have a motion to get this on the floor, and the manager and Transportation Director can explain this. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Moved by Counsel Walker.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Cowan. Before we open this up to public comment, Mr. Labonte, if you could provide some background. I know that we dealt with this last year, but things have changed. If you can provide the background to the council and the public, that'd be appreciated.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. Given how efficiently you're moving through your agenda, I'll give you the brief version of the events.
We gave you extra time.
Oh, there we go. I'll start a timer. Hangar number 5, also known by many as the Lufthansa hangar. It was built for the Constellation Starliner project of Lufthansa Technik some time ago. That was built by a private developer who leased it to the airport, who then subleased it to Lufthansa with no markup. So his debt service became the airport's lease amount, became the sublease amount in a triple net lease. All the utilities, insurance, in that case, privately owned property taxes, all of that fell to the tenant. That project ran into some financial challenges as it continued on. There was an approach to refinance to lower the lease rates. One of the ways that was accomplished was for the two cities to direct the airport to buy out the developer, and the two cities would provide a loan to finance that acquisition. Not through bonded debt, but through the respective cities' fund balances. So the airport is its own quasi-governmental thing, but it's really the two cities acting through a different legal vehicle. So the cities had the airport buy the hangar and agreed to loan that money at a little bit more than what the fund balance was getting for interest. It was in an era of extremely low interest rates, so the 2.5% or so was more than what those fund balances were achieving from the respective banks. Fast forward a little bit further, Lufthansa closes out the project, and Elite Airways from Portland seeks a lease to open up a maintenance shop. Again, to align what the tenant's willing to pay and what the airport's debt service would be, there was another refinance. So again, the cities loaned themselves, in essence, the money, and that then further lowered what Elite would have to pay. In 2023, through non-payment around the time the city stepped in to run the airport, sort of in receivership, we had to evict Elite. There hadn't been maintenance. Utilities were coming back to the airport. Because Elite had been paying, there was no money to make the debt service payment. Each city agreed at the board's request to take fiscal years 23 and 24 loan payments and put them at the end of the debt service. So we're still going to make all the payments, but the airport was not in a very good cash position to pay the two cities. Fast forward a little bit further along, the reality was we don't have a tenant. We continue to hunt for a tenant at the airport that might want to use all of that space. A couple of counselors are coming out tomorrow. I appreciate you making the time. If you haven't been in that hangar, it's a big space. And we're using it at the airport to grow the number of base tenants. So we have a lot of small aircraft in a hangar that was built for very large aircraft. So near term, it's good, more base tenants, we're increasing some of our fuel sales. The reality is that hangar is obscenely expensive to operate. During the winter, we're spending over $7,000 a month just on utilities. Heating that thing, the doors are on, in essence, railroad tracks to open and close. So we approached the cities last year in the budget deliberations. The board supported my recommendation to recognize the principle. We want to pay this back, but could we do a 20-year no-interest finance on the remaining debt? Lower our annual operating costs, try to get the building to break even as we try to focus on other efforts. Both cities were very generous in agreeing to that. Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, Lewiston moved, without me being able to be at the meeting or being public noticed, they moved to reconsider that action and then voted to add interest to the loan. Neither city has billed yet for this year's debt service payment, but to me, if one sponsor of the airport wishes to extract interest from the airport, both cities, in the interest of equity, should do that. I'm not coming to you excited. This will add a $16,000 to $20,000 dent into our costs. If you haven't seen yet, you will see a budget memo that I put together. I provided it to Lewiston last week. This will be 5 straight fiscal years where we've not asked for an additional subsidy beyond the 205. Everything is more expensive, and the board inherited an airport that had not had preventative maintenance, let alone meaningful capital planning for a long time. So we're holding together, we're trying to grow sustainably, and every $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 makes a difference. But if Lewiston is going to direct the airport to pay interest, Auburn deserves the same courtesy. So I'm here tonight, appreciate staff getting this on the agenda to ask for the same, which is 2.58%. Happy to answer questions.
Before we go to the council for questions, I just make one observation. So the 205 that the director is talking about is the $205,000 subsidy that each city pays. Under the interlocal agreement, the airport can ask the cities to raise that. The cities are obligated to fund that unless the airport board reduces it. The direction that they're headed in is to eliminate these subsidies, right? So the board is trying to get the airport to a point where it breaks even and then further down the road actually makes money that it can reinvest into the airport. But at the current time, we're subsidizing them. So in effect, we're going to charge ourselves interest to pay it through a subsidy. So I'll just be blunt about this, the same thing I said when we decided to do this last year. This makes no sense to take money out of one pocket and put it in your pants in the other pocket. But here we are. It's just going to prolong the day where we get to not having to subsidize the airport. So with that, other questions for the director or comments from the council? Council Platt.
I want to make sure to my math right. I heard you say 25,000, some sort of 5-digit number. I just did a quick amortization calculator. It says it's about $700 a month more than what you would have been paying with a 0% interest. Is that right? Is that the same calculation?
Yeah, I want to say it was like $8,600 or so, roughly per city.
Year.
Yep.
The additional. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I mean, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. Seems like we're adding a bunch of administrative work to pay ourselves $8,500 every year through 2 steps as opposed to 0 steps. But our hands are kind of tied.
So
right?
then we can charge ourselves a subsidy to pay ourselves the interest.
Right, but if we don't do it, then we're just gonna go back and forth and back and forth and back
Right.
and forth, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Platt and with Director Labonte that, it's unfortunate we're here, but I think, like we do with most interlocal agreements, we need to stay everybody on the same page. So I think the council should pass this, but it doesn't seem to have a lot of benefit.
Seems like an amount of money not worth fighting over.
Correct. Councilor Randall.
If we were to not pass this, does it go back to Lewiston for them to consider 0 again? Or is that what you're saying? It would just go back and forth?
Director Labonte can answer this, but my recollection from the past is this isn't like the 911 interlocal agreement where if we didn't fund something, they would have to reduce theirs. We could pay the interest to Lewiston and not pay the interest to Auburn, but overall, we'd better everybody to stay in alignment.
Yeah, it was unfortunate as I presented the budget to, or at least the state of the airport to Lewiston last week. The board has adopted a balanced budget. They provided a no interest loan to the buyers of the Colisee. So a fairly risky investment compared to funding yourself through a joint agency. The goal is to continue to improve the airport. Phil's leadership, his support for me at the time, just as the city's transportation director, to lean in. Auburn has carried significant weight to get this facility on more solid footing, which is why I wanted to make sure that we brought equity to the interest question. The board could certainly take up, sorry, Mr. Mayor, if the council wanted the board to revisit accepting having to pay interest, I could certainly work with the chair to have on the agenda the board discussing whether or not there needs to be a fresh approach to the 2 cities, in essence, sort of subsidizing the interest. But it does add extra administrative staff to come to these meetings and have you take up your meeting time.
Other thoughts or questions from the council? Council Cowan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just echo the sentiments, Mayor and Councilor Platts. It seems an unfortunate reality, but I agree that being parity, for parity and equity, I appreciate you bringing this forward. I'm in support.
Any other thoughts or questions? Council ready for the question? Vote will be by, vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? 7 having voted affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Ordinance 06-0406-2026, amending Chapter 60 zoning of the city's Code of Ordinances regarding legislative document 427, an act to regulate municipal parking space minimums. For clarification for the public, LD 427 was an adopted bill by the legislature that changed minimum parking standards throughout the state and required municipalities to conform their zoning ordinances. What's before you tonight has been worked by the planning department and the planning board has sent this forward for adoption, recommending the adoption as it conforms our ordinances pursuant to the statute. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Moved by Council Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Duval. Questions by the council?
So just the wording is a little confusing to me. So allowing more, is it basically requiring more? Is that actually what the language is talking about?
Mr. Cousins, I think, could answer that. My understanding would be that the way the statute works, the city cannot require more than a certain number of parking spots. Developers are free in their site plan to propose any number that they want. That's correct, right?
Yeah, okay. So the wording is just really, allowing is just a bizarre word choice in that particular space, but thank you.
Yeah, so a good example of this would be Brickyard Circle. Even under the prior ordinance, they propose in their site plan more parking spaces than the minimum to meet what they saw was the market demand for resident and visitor parking at their complex. Any other questions on this item? Council ready for the question? This will be first reading. The vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Randall?
Yes.
Counselor Cowan?
Yes.
Counselor Duvall?
Yes.
Counselor Butler?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Platts?
Yes.
7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll move on to reports. A few items to report. Because of the schedule, we've had a little bit longer period of time than typical. So back on March 17th, we had the public forum for the issue regarding the mobile home parks. Very well attended. Several councilors were there, staff, folks from Maine Housing. I think it was very productive, and I think that the councilors got some really good feedback from the attendees. The status of this now is we've taken the feedback we've received and using the model ordinance as an initial framework. We have this over to legal to draft a proposed ordinance. That will be coming back to the council probably the first meeting in May to look at that, see what the framework of the ordinance would look like, and have a discussion about the policy issues that would be contained in that. And then we'll move along from there. On the 25th of March, I attended the Maine Mayor's Coalition Legislative Day up to Augusta. Very well attended. We had an opportunity to talk with lots of legislators, leadership, people on the Appropriations Committee about what was important to the larger cities. The Home for Good cohort meeting took place on the 26th. Is an update. The plans for the Home for Good facility will be in front of the planning board next week, and they have a tentative fall start date, late fall for start of construction. I attended representing the elected officials, so I should get lots of thanks from the counselors. For the Auburn Water District Emergency Response Tabletop exercise, it was a whole morning exercise on the 31st. It actually was quite interesting as they worked through some scenarios of emergencies that affected water quality. I was fortunate to attend a tour and meet with the leadership at Good Shepherd. If people haven't been there, I haven't been there for quite a few years. If you haven't been there, it's worthwhile to at some point set up a tour and go and see their operation and the extent of the services they're providing for food insecurity across the state. The Powell Center had their Easter egg hunt and barbecue on April 2nd. Big thanks to the Powell Center staff and their volunteers, and to the Exchange Club. The Exchange Club did a great job providing the food, and really large turnout with kids and their parents, and it was a really great event. The last thing is the upcoming comprehensive plan open houses. So the staff and the committee will be presenting draft future land use maps with the growth zones and the land characteristic zones. There's 4 upcoming meetings. They're all posted on the city website, but they're on Tuesday the 7th at 5:30 at Sherwood Heights School, Wednesday the 8th at 5:30 at the East Auburn School, Wednesday the 15th at 5:30 at the Powell Center, and Saturday the 18th at 10 a.m. at Edward Little High School. Where the committee is really looking for feedback from the public, so come by and see the maps and offer your opinion. So with that, Councilor Geary.
Nothing at the moment to report.
Councilor Randall.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilor Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to reinforce, would encourage people to come out and give us feedback for the comp plan. A lot of good work, but we really want to hear from people. So,
Councilor Duvall.
Exactly the same thing as Councilor Cowan. The comp plan meetings will be really interesting and useful.
Councilor Butler.
Comp plan has been very well covered, so nothing this week.
Councilor Walker.
Nothing at this point.
Councilor Platt.
I just have to report, at the nudging of Councilor Duvall, the Harriman Facilities report has been posted to the school department site. So I know as we learn more about the AMS project, if you want to have a better understanding of what, according to the Harriman plan, is suggested for CIP in the next 5 years, that would be the place to see it.
Thank you. Representative Edwards.
To start, Edward Little is looking for volunteer opportunities for our EL Gives Back Day. So if you guys have anyone, let them reach out to Principal Ackley. Spring sports have started, and today marks 30 days until the seniors' last day.
Mr. Manager.
Not that anyone's counting, right? So, just to Councilor Platts regarding the Harriman report, I will forward you that so you'll have it in a link. So you'll be able to find it pretty easily that way. Just a couple things to report out on. This is our season of non-ice events at Norway Savings Bank Arena. And what I'll be providing you is a report regarding the activity that's taking place there on the weekend. So we've had the home show currently last weekend, this past weekend, where we had a cheering competition. We have an RV show that's coming up. So we have a lot of events there that have an economic impact in the community. So We met with the director today. We'll be providing you a weekend impact on what does that look like for us as a community. So you'll have that information and be able to kind of be aware of what's taking place in the community as it pertains to the ice arena. And that's it, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to the second open session of the evening. If there's any member of the public that would like to address the council, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
My name is John Cleveland. I live at 183 Davis Avenue in Auburn, and I'm also chair of the infamous Comprehensive Planning Committee. Thank you all for mentioning it. I just wanted to add a little something more on those meetings. All of the meetings that start at 5:30 and go to 7:30, we have those structured, so if you can't be there right at 5:30, that's okay. You can come anytime during that 2-hour period, and we have it structured so that you'll have materials, you'll have individuals there, and the maps and so forth will be there, and we'll answer your questions and walk through. So if you have to finish your dinner in the evening before you come, that's fine. Come on over, you can still do that. Same thing with the Saturday one, except a little different time. You can come anytime that we're open, and we'll provide you with the information, and we hope as many of you as possible will come.
Thank you very much. Any other member of the public who'd like to address the council, please approach the podium. Not seeing any, the open session is closed. The council has 2 executive sessions this evening. No action is expected after the executive sessions. The council will move directly to adjournment when we come out of the second executive session. So the first executive session is pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405, Sub 6D, for labor contract negotiations concerning the Police Department Patrol Unit. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Moved by Council Walker. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Cowan. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor. The council will be in executive session.